Rebonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Je vais appeler Ali Abu Awwad, please can you join me, et ainsi que Jean-Pierre Filiou pour nous rejoindre. Merci de venir. Le troisième intervenant est Mai Pundak, qui nous rejoint par visio de Tel Aviv.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mai. Je voudrais vous présenter nos trois intervenants, même si vous les connaissez. Je vais commencer Lady First par Mai Pundak. Mai est la présidente israélienne de l'organisation A Land for All qui plaide pour la création d'une fédération israélo-palestinienne. Et elle-même est la fille de Ron Pundak qui a été l'initiateur des accords d'Oslo. Et donc, elle se démarque de la solution des deux États. Elle va nous expliquer plus tard pourquoi. J'aimerais, à ma droite, immédiatement, il y a Ali Abu Awwad, qui a passé des années en prison, 4 ans, je crois, ainsi notamment que sa mère, qui était membre du Fatah. Son frère a été tué par un soldat israélien alors qu'il n'était nullement militant. Et Ali, aujourd'hui, dirige une organisation qui s'appelle Tahrir, change en français, change, qui plaide pour une solution, mais avec la non-violence. Et à ma droite, un peu plus loin, Jean-Pierre Filiou, que vous lisez peut-être dans Le Monde, qui est diplomate de formation, qui a commencé par le chinois avant de se tourner vers l'arabe. Et effectivement, c'est sans doute plus facile que les 3000 caractères, et qui était en poste dans différents pays arabes, qui a écrit peut-être la seule histoire existante sur Gaza, qui a écrit notamment aussi une chanson sur Gaza, et qui est aujourd'hui détaché depuis un certain nombre d'années du Quai d'Orsay et pour rejoindre la carrière académique. Je vous remercie tous les trois. Et évidemment, cette soirée se passe dans un contexte très particulier. Il ne s'agit pas pour nous ici de faire l'historique de ce qui s'est passé depuis le 7 octobre. Nous sommes tous conscients des crimes qui ont été commis et des crimes qui continuent à être commis. Je rappellerai juste les propos de la présidente de la Commission européenne aujourd'hui même qui demandait un cessez-le-feu humanitaire immédiat pour empêcher la famine à Gaza, ainsi qu'un cessez-le-feu beaucoup plus, disons, une pause humanitaire et un cessez-le-feu durable. La question que j'aimerais vous poser à chacun des intervenants pour commencer, c'est de savoir comment résonne en vous le 7 octobre et ce qui s'est passé après jusqu'à aujourd'hui. En quoi vous, je pense en particulier à Mai et à Ali, comment finalement cela a changé votre perspective, cela a altéré ou pas? Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, peut-on sortir, on en verra plus loin peut-être cette question de la situation dans laquelle on se trouve, mais d'abord une question éminemment plus personnelle, votre sentiment après l'effroyable situation dans laquelle nous sommes aujourd'hui. Mai, please, could you start?
Yes, thank you, Pierre, and thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and for even that it's difficult and uncomfortable, being able to confront the reality the awful reality going on in Israel-Palestine today. And even being here tonight is already another step towards change. And Ali, it's great to see you, my friend. Sorry I can't be there with you in person. And I'm with you. So I will start with answering a part of your very complicated and big question, Pierre, about what do we learn from October 7th. I want to make 3 main points. The first one is that we have been complicit, all of us, for too long in accepting the fake status quo, or the idea that this conflict we can shrink it or we can manage it. And I hope that the atrocities of October 7th have taught us that this conflict needs to end. And there is no military way to end this conflict. There is only a political one. And so I think that the most important thing in trying to see a glimpse of opportunity in this huge catastrophe and crisis is that this conflict needs to end. It needs to end now, and it will only end with a viable, sustainable, relevant, shared political solution. The other thing that I want to say, which connects to that, is that this is a historic moment, and that with historic moments comes great responsibility. And that responsibility needs to be on all of us, as many people as possible, to ensure that this will be the last war. Because this amount of violence is, I don't have the right words to say how awful it is and how close we are to the pitfall in Israel-Palestine. But we are in the same distance between an even bigger catastrophe than today, but even more historic catastrophe than today, and to a historic opportunity of solving this conflict. Which leads me just to one more point that I want to say that I think has echoed since October 7th, which is the mutual dependency that Israelis and Palestinians share today. I will give just a couple of examples, but if we thought that big walls and thinking that we as Israelis can put Palestinians behind the wall and forget about them, and that it will not affect us, we were wrong. If we think that big walls, $1 billion of walls, and all the IDF, technicality, superiority, 16 years of siege, all the measures of segregation and separation in this homeland will ensure safety and security for Israelis, we were wrong. And so I think that October 7th demands that we will come up with a new updated analysis of the reality of this homeland in order to have better, sustainable, practical and pragmatic solutions for the future.
Thank you, Mai. Ali, what is your perspective about, Mai spoke about historic moments. How do you feel about it? Can you tell us, in the same time, your feeling, but also your analysis of the situation we are all today?
Thank you for having us. I just want to start by saying how much it's easy to sit here and give opinions. How much it's easy to analyze the situation and be peaceful when you live in Geneva. And how much it's easy to fall in taking sides while we keep dying over there. It's Ramadan. Children are dying from lack of food. My people. And the world is unjust. And the first lesson that I want to tell you that we have to be aware of that. I don't think we are aware. We have to be aware that no one is going to solve this problem than us. than those, and there are many. Yes, I am non-violence activists. Maybe we are not the majority, but we are this active minority who represent the silent majority. The majority of both sides want this conflict to end yesterday. But sometimes we are led by our fear. Many Jewish people fear the solution. They fear the Palestinian state because they are not sure that they will be secure. On the other hand, how can they implement the ideological political project if there is a solution? And one of the questions that I was raising, even in my manifesto, this situation has brought us to two questions, two basic questions to learn and try to give answers if we can. Israelis today has to decide, are you occupying people for security, or you're occupying land for ideology? Because there is no connection between security and the building of settlements and walls. On the other hand, we Palestinians are facing a hard question. Do we recognize the Jewish legitimate belonging to the land, or we are afraid that this will be a propaganda to legitimize the occupation? And if we start by these questions, we will realize and reach one fact, whether we like it or not, that both sides will exist forever there. Both sides will fight until the last drop of blood, because this is the only where they can belong and thrive, and both sides are not going to anywhere. This is the fact, and this is fact. Number two lesson, I have learned how painful it is to be truthful, to tell the truth. And I can see the energy in this room. I would like to have this energy to come out to the street, Jewish and Arabs together, to push and to force these governmental voices who are either silent or supporting one side without a serious pressure that will bring us and create the political international umbrella for those right-wing not to act just for their sides and victimize us. It brings us to a lesson. And after all what I have been through, believe me, I have never grown peacefully. I served years with my mother in the prison. I lost my brother in the conflict. I'm carrying this wounded knee. Barely I can up to the stairs because settlers has shot me. It's so easy for me to be the hero of hate. But I know the minute that I do that, I'm creating a grave for my just cause as Palestinian. A grave for my right, because as a consequences of that, I know that the fear of the Jewish people has been invested purposely by someone like Netanyahu, just to blind the humanity of the Jewish people toward our rights. This is another lesson that I have learned. The last thing that I have learned, that it's hard to be a human being in a jungle. We live in a jungle today. It's a jungle. I was not born to be the victim of the Zionist movement or of the Jewish people. And I will not thrive or be free over Jewish graves and bodies. But we will be both thriving if we are courageous enough not to overcome the painful past and the painful reality, but to be able and courageous to take painful decisions toward the future. This is my reality, and this is my work. And this is the courage, which is the third lesson that brought me here, where I feel guilty every day of being far from my people, because they need my activism over there. But without your voice and your mission to stand for a solution that will be fair to everyone, we will just keep whether creating this gap to be larger, because each campaign can justify their acts. I'm not here for this. I'm not here for another competition of suffering between Jews and Palestinians. I'm here for the truth and the strategic way to act non-violently and not just to have hummus and hug Jewish people. No, this is not the non-violence that I'm talking about. To be strategized in a peaceful movement that will create the political umbrella and that will create the massive pressure to create the environment where solution can be possible. This is why I'm here for, and this is what I'm ready to die for. I'm willing to give my life to see a smile back on a Gaza kid who have no milk when he go to sleep until he die. This is not the reality that we want to see. I'm not ready to be part of any argument over my rights. I want partners. I don't want more enemies. And believe me, I'm not here to argue. And this recent war has taught me another lesson. That whether you be part of the solution but in a strategic, effective way, or leave us aside, we will manage. Some will die, thousands will die. And we will be just numbers, but there will be no solution. I'm not here for that. And this is my call on you, to take act and don't be afraid to say the truth. Don't be afraid to see each other. Don't be afraid to force your silent government that this government and other governments, that Biden is not the best angel for peace. Push them to play a just role for my people and for all the people of that land. That's what I'm here for. And that's my lesson that I have learned.
Ali, I would like to pursue with you. I would like to hear from you. What is it to be strategic today for you, for the Palestinian people, for the Israeli people, and for us here?
Here is my plan, because we're not just, I think, first of all, we need an immediate ceasefire yesterday, not now. An immediate ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire. Number two, we need cease conflict. To cease the conflict, we need an international political force to create the first international political conference that all parties will be represented and come up with a solution that will consider the belonging of both people to the both sides of the land. That is, I believe, that this lady is part of, which is a political vision for these two identities, to have independent without separation of identities. And I believe that the Arab, in the first place, and the international community had to be committed to rebuild Gaza and to rebuild life for the people. I believe that the Palestinian prisoner and all the hostages has to be released for states that will guarantee security for each other, not hostages in each other's side. And I believe that the world will not do none of that until we act massively on the ground to push those politicians to that corner. This is my strategy, and this is what I'm part of, and I have been part of even a few days ago, debating, talking, agreeing with political, academic, medical, lawyers from both sides in this city for 3 days. That are the floor was almost falling from emotions to come up with principles, practical principles for solution. This is how do I see it happening, and hopefully, finally, maybe, we are building some huge machine beyond good intentions, rainbows, prayers, hummus, and hugs.
Jean-Pierre, j'aimerais avoir votre réaction à la fois sur ce qu'a dit Mai et sur ce que vient de dire Ali.
Alors d'abord, on se sent très humble quand on entend des appels aussi extraordinaires et qui sont loin d'être aussi minoritaires qu'on le dit, mais qui, grâce à l'espace que vous leur offrez, prennent une toute autre dimension. Le 7 octobre, à 14h, j'étais à Blois, au rendez-vous de l'histoire, pour un débat sur l'Israël de Netanyahou, parce que j'ai écrit la seule biographie en langue française d'un Premier ministre qui, à l'époque, intéressait peu de monde. On considérait qu'il n'était pas un sujet en soi. Ça s'appelait « Main basse sur Israël ». Et donc, le 7 octobre à 14h, on commençait seulement à prendre la mesure de l'horreur. Et j'ai juste appelé à la solidarité avec toutes les victimes parce que j'étais déjà convaincu que le conflit qui s'ouvrait, même s'il n'était que la continuation de la longue guerre israélo-palestinienne, serait d'une dimension absolument sans précédent et avec un nombre de victimes absolument sans précédent. Et j'ai évidemment appelé à la libération inconditionnelle des otages. Et après, comme historien, j'ai essayé de me rendre utile, c'est-à-dire que j'ai achevé au plus vite un livre qui était en cours, mais dont les leçons me paraissent porter et rentrer en écho avec ce qui a été dit aussi bien par May que par Ali. Vu que le titre s'appelle « Comment la Palestine fut perdue et pourquoi Israël n'a pas gagné ». Parce que le paradoxe de ce conflit, qui n'a que trop duré, c'est que la partie la plus forte ne peut pas jouir de sa victoire tant qu'elle dénie les droits à la partie la plus faible. Et j'ai essayé d'expliquer pourquoi l'une a été la plus forte, l'autre la plus faible, mais je ne vais pas rentrer dans ce raisonnement. En revanche, ce qui est certain, c'est qu'il y a eu 15 guerres menées par Israël à Gaza depuis 1948. Gaza, d'ailleurs la bande de Gaza, est le produit de la guerre. C'était une oasis, un carrefour, qui maintenant est une enclave assiégée depuis 16 ans. Je rappelle que le blocus est un acte de guerre. Donc cet acte de guerre, nous l'avons tous toléré pendant 16 ans, jusqu'au 7 octobre 2023. Toutes ces guerres ont été gagnées militairement et perdues politiquement par Israël, sauf la première intifada. Yitzhak Rabin a, si j'ose dire, gagné en lançant le processus de paix dit d'Oslo avec Yasser Arafat et l'Organisation de libération de la Palestine, et donc la contribution éminente du père de May. Mais du côté palestinien aussi, la première intifada, comme soulèvement non armé, a représenté la percée historique la plus importante à ce jour pour les droits palestiniens. Et quand on voit comment la non-violence a pu être efficace, ça n'est pas du tout, et je parle à côté d'un militant qui a dit qu'il était prêt à mourir. La non-violence, ce ne sont pas les bisounours, ça peut aller très loin. Et on voit que dans l'histoire longue du conflit israélo-palestinien et avant du conflit judéo-arabe en Palestine, les deux moments où on a eu cette mobilisation la plus forte, c'était la grève générale de 1936 qui a duré 6 mois, qui a été fondamentale pour finalement contraindre les Britanniques à reconnaître les droits des Arabes de Palestine qu'ils avaient niés par la déclaration Balfour 20 ans plus tôt, et évidemment la première intifada, parce que ces mouvements non violents, au-delà du fait qu'ils inscrivent une nouvelle dynamique dans la confrontation, ils sont aussi une mobilisation qui intègre la société palestinienne. Par-delà ces factions, et le factionnalisme palestinien a été un désastre pour le nationalisme palestinien, et ce n'est pas aujourd'hui, avec cette espèce de course des différents groupes et leaders plus ou moins proclamés qu'on va voir le contraire. Une mobilisation non violente intègre. Une lutte armée divise. Et une lutte armée ne peut pas être démocratique. Et la lutte armée, toutes les luttes de libération armée ont une dimension de guerre civile. Et les luttes armées palestiniennes ont toujours débouché sur une forme plus ou moins atténuée de guerre civile palestino-palestinienne. La plus grave ayant été celle qui a conduit à la prise de la bande de Gaza par le Hamas en juin 2007, après des centaines de morts. Et Ali évoquait son genou. Il faut savoir que pendant cette guerre civile palestino-palestinienne, le nombre de mutilés à Gaza a doublé, triplé, quadruplé, parce que les factions palestiniennes ne faisaient pas de prisonniers, elles tiraient dans les genoux. Donc cette violence-là, elle finit toujours par se retourner contre le peuple concerné. C'est pour ça qu'effectivement, vous entendre tous les deux est d'un grand réconfort pour le citoyen du monde, mais aussi pour l'historien, parce que c'est la seule solution pour les deux peuples. Israël n'a pas gagné, Israël ne gagnera jamais tant qu'il n'y aura pas un État palestinien qui ne pourra être, à mon sens, que démocratique et démilitarisé. Mais la clé de tout cela, si je peux anticiper, c'est Gaza. Or, ce n'est pas seulement qu'on a cru que la question palestinienne était enterrée, mais on a cru qu'un territoire comme Gaza, donc un territoire qui a été une oasis, un carrefour, pendant des millénaires, dont l'histoire est aujourd'hui réduite en poussière sous nos yeux. On a cru que ce territoire pouvait rester enclavé, assiégé et au fond disparaître. Et d'ailleurs, c'était quand même assez difficile d'aller à Gaza, c'est-à-dire qu'on finissait par ne plus avoir l'expérience physique de cette population et de ce territoire. Et là encore, il y a une responsabilité palestinienne. C'est Mahmoud Abbas, l'actuel président. Alors, il a toutes les présidences que vous voulez. Il est président de l'OLP, il est président du Fatah, il est président de l'autorité palestinienne. Et puis, pour faire bonne mesure, il est aussi président de l'État de Palestine. Ce président, au lieu d'aller en juin 2007 à Gaza, dont la majorité de la population l'avait élu, il a dit bon débarras, on va les laisser au Hamas. Et nous, on va rester avec Ramallah et le grand jeu international, et on va laisser ces 2 millions de femmes et d'hommes être complètement exclus. Et on va même, au nom de l'autorité palestinienne, s'opposer à des allègements du blocus parce qu'ils feraient le jeu du Hamas. Et donc, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé? Je vais être très bref. Ce qui était inévitable, c'est-à-dire que le blocus a donné les clés de la bande de Gaza au Hamas. J'ai beaucoup travaillé sur la répression dans le monde arabe, sur les services de renseignement, sur les polices politiques. Gaza est l'endroit de tout le monde arabe où la densité de flics, d'oppresseurs arabes contre une population arabe est la plus forte. Et la plus forte entre les différentes milices, les polices, etc. Et donc, le deuxième stade, c'était qu'une fois qu'on avait donné les clés du Hamas à Gaza, eh bien, à l'intérieur du Hamas, ça allait être les plus durs, les tenants d'une lutte armée à outrance, d'un terrorisme sauvage, voire barbare, qui finirait par l'emporter, en ayant préparé de très longue date les tunnels, les provisions, les stocks d'essence. Donc, au-delà du crime que c'est de dénier l'aide humanitaire à 2 300 000 femmes et hommes, dont 40% d'enfants, il faut savoir que c'est absolument inutile s'il s'agit d'affaiblir le Hamas.
Merci, Jean-Pierre Filiou. Jean-Pierre disait à l'instant que Gaza est la clé. J'aimerais avoir votre vision et aussi comment vous voyez les prochaines étapes, comment vous voyez que Gaza peut sortir de l'effroyable solution dans laquelle elle est aujourd'hui, et si aujourd'hui une fenêtre d'opportunité peut exister pour un avenir différent que celui que nous voyons aujourd'hui. I think you are mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Sure.
So I will start with just echoing what Ali said. The war needs to end yesterday. The war is not providing beyond the catastrophe, beyond the fact that Israel, the state of the Jewish people, is accused in genocide in The Hague. Beyond the humanitarian crisis, this war is not providing safety and security for Israelis. And so I think that for all the reasons, if not to mention the fact that any day now there can be another war coming from north or east, the war needs to end right now, and the suffering of the people need to end right now. Because when we talk about what we call the day after, and I say it with quotes, because I think that it's important, as Ali said, not to have this conversation here. You know, there are people behind these conversations, and there will not be a day after to talk about if we continue the war as it continues today. And so to your question directly, I think that I have to admit that with the pictures that we're seeing from Gaza today, it's very, very, very difficult to imagine any future from Gaza. But as I said earlier, and I think that, again, trying to echo Ali, we have no choice. We now have a choice of either living together or dying together. And what we call the camp of the living, you know, the people who want to live, we will do everything in our power to end this war and make it the last one. And so when you ask me about Gaza as a key, I think that Gaza is a key on many levels. The first is that, again, we see that in the place with the most segregation, with the biggest segregation, with the biggest walls, with siege, with all mechanisms that we can imagine about separating these two people, that is where the violence came from. As opposed to, for example, 2 million Palestinians who live within Israel, who are the families and relatives and friends and people of the same Palestinians living in Gaza, who are killing today. These same Palestinians live within Israel as Israeli citizens, and are our doctors, and our colleagues, and our friends, and our teachers. What does that teach us? What I think that Gaza can be is a key for us to understanding what does not work, as opposed to what can give us a sustainable future. I will give you another example. There's an incredibly important organization called EcoPace, and that they study the conflict in eyes of climate change, which I think is an important paradigm to bring into the conversation. They show that the sewage of Gaza gets into the Mediterranean Sea, and after, I think, 2 days, it arrives to the shore of Tel Aviv. And so young Tel Aviv hipsters who go to the beach, who have really don't even know about occupation, because that's how blind we've been, that some people don't even know about occupation. They go to the beach and the beach is closed because you cannot separate Gaza from Al-Aqsa, from Yafo, from Tel Aviv, because we're talking about one homeland. I will give you one last example, which I think is an important one, again, about Gaza. A few weeks ago, the first IDF soldier died from a bacteria coming out from the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We saw this in COVID as well. You cannot separate. COVID does not stop at the green line. It does not stop at the checkpoint. And so I think that what Gaza teaches us, and I think this connects to Jean-Pierre's remarks as well, Gaza has always been a place of transition. Gaza is the ultimate example of when we think about Israel integrating itself into the Middle East. If we think about a sustainable future of Israel integrating itself into the Middle East, Gaza is a critical component of that. You cannot think about normalizing a reality and a financial prosperity for this region with Saudi and with the Middle East and Israel integrating into this space, into this region, and segregating Israelis and Palestinians, and segregating, and another level, segregating Gaza from the West Bank, segregating Palestinians from themselves, segregating, now Palestinians cannot come to Al-Aqsa on Ramadan to pray. So I think that Gaza and this October 7th and what happened after it is an example, or is a key is a good word, of pushing us beyond what we know, of what we think we know, push our political imagination, because the dystopiot, or the nightmares we see now, it's time for us to also articulate a political vision. It's time for us to create a new common sense, to learn from the mistakes of the past, to learn of the things that are not working, to learn from conflicts that have resolved themselves in a sustainable way. The European Union is one example. And so the work that we are doing today is trying to present a new vision. And just to clarify maybe the opening remarks, we actually are a two-state solution organization. We do believe in the two-state solution, but a very different two-state solution. We call it two states, one homeland. So it is a two-state solution because sovereignty, because right for self-determination, because Palestinians today deserve an independent, sovereign, democratic state that we have had for 75 years. However, if we continue imagining the two-state solution based on the paradigm of separation and segregation, rather than a certain amount of integration, of tight collaboration, of a shared attachment to this homeland, if we do not address these issues and not address the things that we know will provide us for prosperity and sustainability, we might fail this historic moment.
You're asking for radical imagination, but in the same time, both people, both societies are traumatized. There is very little empathy for the other sides. What can you do to overcome it?
I will argue that this is I think political imagination is crucial. I think that as a Jew, I have thousands of years of tradition of political imagination that I have completely given up in the past 70 years. But I will argue that this is the most pragmatic solution you have on the table. I will argue that if you continue talking about the two-state solution, while you know the deadlocks, while you know you can't solve them, while you know the two people are actually not interested in this classic two-state solution, and that the international community itself is talking about a two-state solution as an empty shell, as an excuse to doing nothing and creating an impossible reality on the ground here, I think it is our responsibility to bring back the content, the hope, but also the pragmatic, practical ideas of how to get to the two-state solution, and to make sure that it is based on equality, on a certain amount of partnership, and understanding that no one, as Ali said, no one is going anywhere. And to your second question about the trust, well, you are completely right. Israelis and Palestinians, and again, the war hasn't even ended. So every day we are creating more hatred and more fear. However, I want to remind you something that is part of our own history, not going even so far, which is 1973. And the huge war between Israel and Egypt that has led to the first peace agreement to ensure safety for both people. And if you would ask Israelis in 73, and you will poll the people, if they trust the Egyptians, or if there would ever be a peace agreement, they will say no. And this goes maybe bringing it back to Europe, do you think if we would ask French and German citizens 80 years ago if there would be an open border between Germany and France, would they imagine that their grandchildren will live in Paris or Berlin? The answer is no. So I push you all to think beyond the limiting and narrow imagination that we have on what the opportunities are for Israel-Palestine, to learn from your own experiences, to expand your mind and to be practical. What works around the world for sustainable safety for two people? This is how we need to think. We cannot be confined by the things that have prevented this solution for being this conflict from being solved until now. We need new paradigms. We need new voices. We need new ideas. We need to think and to study very hard what can and cannot work. And that is what we have been doing in Israel-Palestine, a land for all. We call it a confederal, not a federal, but a confederal idea. 2 states, yes, but also with a superstructure or another infrastructure of managing in collaboration what needs to be managed together. Because when you think about climate or about water or about healthcare or even about security, let me remind you that prior to October 7th, the security that I have had as an Israeli Jew in Israel is not due to the separation barrier, as you saw very well in this film. It is due to very tight collaboration between Israel and the PA. That is what has ensured me before October 7th, a sense of safety. And so if people are going to tell me now that bigger walls and more segregation will ensure my safety and my kids' safety in this land, I will say no. I will demand a vision that is relevant and updated and learns from what reality says. And what reality says is that there are two people in this one homeland. We all love it. We all care about it. We all have a very profound sense of attachment to the entire homeland. And you will have to address the sentiment and the attachment when you think about a solution. And you will have to present a vision that will create hope, that will galvanize the people, and that will let them believe that we deserve and are capable of a long-lasting peace and reconciliation.
Ali, I would like to know does it resonate with you? And in a few days' time, you will be back home. What are you going to do? How are you going to transform this terrible reality and walk towards with other people to this vision, to this radical imagination to make another life possible?
What I'm going to do is what I have been doing for the last 22 years. And I think we need also to shift as the situation shift, not in our beliefs, but in our activism and strategies. And this is why I was here in this conference that I cannot share a lot about, because I feel that there is a serious energy, even in the political security system, in both sides, to come up with something practical. And I surely agree with May about the typical two-state solution has become the fantasy of all of those diplomats and politicians around peace. This is just a fantasy. It's not going to happen. Even it is linked just to the Palestinian, the typical two-state solution. And if you know and learn more about what May and myself believe in, you will see more truth and more benefit for both sides from such initiative, especially when it comes to refugees like myself, when it comes to diaspora Palestinian like many others, and when it comes to settlers as well. So anyway, so number two, we speak about healing, expecting that the other will heal us. No. We have to heal ourselves. Something brought me to nonviolence, honestly. You know, when I was 15, I was trained on Kalashnikov. It didn't speak to me, but there was no other alternative. Shall I give up and let Israel do whatever they do? This is not the nonviolence that I speak about. we Palestinian, and when you mention the conflict or the civil war between Fatah and Hamas, I'm not sure that I agree about naming it as a civil war. Civil war, you need a state, but there is no state there in Gaza to have a civil war. And part of this conflict is part of the confusion between two identities that Palestinians live every day. And if you don't understand that, you will never understand or get hope. Because you will understand where even violence comes from and the failure of the Oslo Peace Initiative. We struggle between the identity of being part of revolution against the occupier and the identity of being citizens after Oslo Peace Initiative without a state. So the world is demanding from us to be citizens, to have democratic election, to follow Mahmoud Abbas as a president of PA, while the occupation is continue, so we are confused. Shall we follow this guy or shall we identify with the struggle and the fight? Taghyir came to answer that question in the first place. To say, yes, we need to resist injustices. Actually, we went beyond that even. Today, I don't say I want to resist the occupation. I want to end the occupation. There is a big difference, because resistance cannot be a vision or a goal. Resistance is a tool. I go farther by creating the alternative of that system, which is citizenhood, by being responsible for everything. It's easy to blame Israel for a million reasons. Very easy for me. But it's hard to take responsibility. And this comes to healing. We need just to reflect on ourselves, to confront the mirror and say, where is our responsibility? Toward the other and ourselves. This language doesn't exist. Because we just know how to blame each other. We don't know how to take responsibility. Especially we are not equal. We are just equal as a human being, but not in the reality. Especially, we both struggle from lack of leadership. There is corrupted leadership, and there is corrupted also leadership. There is a leadership that advocates for hate and to harm the Palestinian cause of freedom, and to implement a project that will never be implemented, because it will never be at the expense of my dignity, and I will resist it. But I will not resist alone. I will resist it with those like me, that I believe that the best healing of my wounds is a responsible Israeli leadership that will advocate and work for my right, and it does exist. And vice versa. I will stand for Jewish people and Jewish security, but not at the expense of my people's life. I want to become a citizen of a state that it will respect and defend its neighbors, and not to have the struggle between, shall I resist Israel and that's it, or shall I be peaceful, a good kid under occupation? I can't. And this is the non-violence that I believe that it will work, and it did work with many Palestinians who are today in the field acting non-violently. And if the world wants us to send you photos and videos about summer camp between Israeli kids and Palestinian kids who will go to May and hug each other, but the Israelis go to a state while Palestinians go to refugee camp with no water, and you believe on us and give us money to open more shops for peace, this is not the peace that I advocate for. And we should stop this immediately. And we should follow strategic action with a political vision in the massive and the political leadership with the best partnership of the world. And whomever leader in the world will advocate for hate, for anti-Semitism, anti-Islamophobia, he is not our allies, and he's not welcome. Whomever will not take responsibility about his own act that harm the other, he is not my partner. I'm not ashamed, I'm not afraid to say that my Palestinian humanity is much bigger bulldozer than the Israeli tank and than Hamas weapon.
time flies, and I hope that you can have some more minutes for taking some questions. Est-ce que vous avez des questions? Madame là. Monsieur.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aliane May. You know me. We support both your organizations in Palestine and in Israel. What can we do more from Geneva for you?
Mai, do you want to answer that? I mean, we have different organizations, but I represent a movement more than an organization. And Mehra from Beit of Hope has played it right with many allies, Palestinian, Jews, Israelis in her organization, by being pro-solution and supporting these initiatives. And we're going to give you a hard time because I think there is going to be a shift in our activism will require much more than we were today. Go ahead, May. Finally, a Palestinian giving an Israeli a permission.
My work here is done. Thank you, Ali. You know, we've been doing this for a long time, you and me, but every time it's such an honor and such a privilege to hear you speak and do this work together with you. So thank you, and Mera, thank you for everything you're doing. I started by saying this evening that I think that even participating in this conversation is a good step forward. I think that a lot of people are avoiding it and don't, as Ali said, do not want to look truth in the eyes because it's too painful. And believe me, I know in Israel, for example, you cannot even see one picture of Gaza at the media. The public media in Israel does not show you what happens in Gaza. Israelis actually have no idea. That's, you know, easy to say, have no idea, but have all the opportunities not to know what's happening in Gaza, and this is on purpose. And so I think the truth, knowing the truth, even if it's hard, is very, very important. And so again, thank you for being here tonight and organizing this event. For me, I think that there are a few things to do. First of all, we need more people to talk about these voices. Ali said earlier that we are both suffering from lack of leadership. I think that both of us believe that leadership and a change of leadership is needed in Israel and Palestine. Differently, but also similarly, there needs to be a very profound change of leadership. Our leaders are not looking for a democratic future or any kind of future at this point, and there need to be changed. I think that political vision is a crucial component of any leadership change. I think that presenting a better future for your people is a crucial component, and one of the reasons, at least in Israel, that we have not been able to take this government down and get rid of Netanyahu without presenting something that will be better. It will be very difficult to do. And so for me, the first thing that I encourage you all is to talk about this. We know that in Northern Ireland, before the Good Friday Agreement, there was what we call the megaphone effect, meaning that everyone was creating a new common sense. Everyone, journalists and podcasts and articles and media and movies and events and festivals, and everyone needs to start talking about what Ali and I have shared with you today. These are the voices from Israel-Palestine. These are the people of Israel-Palestine. When you talk about the future of Israel-Palestine, these are the voices you bring. And it's crucial that we all participate in switching away from the binary thinking of it's either Israel or Palestine, of the zero-sum game. It is a lie. And we all need to work very hard to unlearn that. And you see our work, we are pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, not because we love each other. We also do, and we're very lucky to do so, but not because we love each other. It is because we understand that at this point of time, if Ali does not have safety and security and dignity and freedom and equality, my safety and equality and dignity and democracy are in jeopardy.
Thank you.
And until we do not end the occupation and end this conflict, we will not be free and we will not have a democratic future. And so just to say, support these causes, bring these ideas, these voices to your representatives, to your leaders, to your parties, make everyone talk about this new common sense, because that way we can create a new reality.
I just want to add, for the shift that we have been facing and still facing, and for the shift that we need, just consider, because of lack of equality, Israel is a state, we are a community living under the military control. The raise of our life condition is immediate need. The strategic action toward Palestinian needs and rights is immediate need. For us as change maker to be heard by our people, we need to raise their level of life, not just their level of dignity. On the other hand, transformation is needed. Dialogue is needed, but transformation without dignified conditions on the ground will be a waste of time. Speaking of reconciliation today is impossible. We need to speak nonviolence activism that will lead to a political solution, the surgery, then we can be able to speak about reconciliation. Let's be practical and let's be realistic. The last thing that if two voices as Jewish and Arabs, Muslim and Christian, will be together here, not to create more gaps, you will be listened by your own leadership that can put a pressure on us. So all of this strategy locally and internationally is needed, but we need to consider also the difference. What can create healing in Palestine is not necessarily the same thing that can create change in Tel Aviv. So we need to understand the difference and decide the different activities and the different huge amount of investment that is needed more in the Palestinian side with a good leadership. This is all what we need, in my opinion, and we need you to take action. We need to support all of those who support us, like Bait of Hope, an initiative in Geneva. It's very near to you. You can, through them, you can know a lot, learn a lot, and invest a lot.
Thank you. On va prendre plusieurs questions, mais je vais demander si on peut étendre un peu le temps, parce que le temps passe trop vite. Donc je vais prendre 3 questions, s'il vous plaît, soyez brefs dans les questions.
Oui, je suis May a parlé d'une solution à 2 États, mais elle a introduit un bémol. Elle a dit une solution à 2 États sans séparation. Et pour moi, c'est une utopie qui rejoint les partisans d'un seul État, la solution à un seul État. C'est une utopie parce qu'on sait que ça n'a jamais marché. L'histoire nous apprend à l'instar...
Une question.
Non, je me laisse finir. Ouais. L'histoire nous apprend à l'instar de Rwanda, de la Bosnie, que la cohabitation entre 2 communautés aux cultures différentes est impossible. C'est le règne de la haine et ça finit toujours par un bain de sang. La priorité politique est l'instauration d'un État de Palestine indépendant. C'est ainsi que le peuple palestinien retrouvera sa dignité. Seule sa reconnaissance imposée par les nations du monde au niveau international un État indépendant palestinien aux côtés d'Israël pourra apporter la paix.
Voilà, j'aimerais des questions, s'il vous plaît. Alors 2 autres, s'il vous plaît. Ici et là, mesdames. Et je demande encore, combien de temps je peux déborder, puisqu'on est assez proche de la fin. Okay.
Hi, I have a question for Mai. So I was wondering what the political opinion is in Israel in regards to this more integrated state. We've seen protests that seem to be against the government, but also protests that are stopping aid trucks. And so it's hard to judge from the outside what political opinion is now.
Thank you. Third one here. D'accord. Sur une troisième. Je vois, j'arrive pas à voir, je dois dire, voilà madame.
Sorry, it might sound a repetition of what the lady before me asked, but I'm very interested to know, how do you want to achieve this vision, Mai, at a time when more than 75% of the Israeli population is actually supporting the starvation in Gaza as a weapon of war, at a time when the demonstrations before the 7th of October were not against occupation and to end occupation, but they were there to retain the supremacy of the Ashkenazi Jews in Israel, to keep their liberal style of life. Thank you.
Mai, you have 3 questions for you, but I have one first for Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre, on n'a pas du tout parlé, en fait, on n'a pas eu le temps de parler de ce qu'on appelle la communauté internationale. Alors j'aurais juste une question sur l'Europe. L'Union européenne, quel rôle doit-elle jouer selon vous?
Essayons d'apprendre un peu des erreurs du passé. En 2005, James Wolfenson, qui nous représentait tous, vu que le quartet pour le Moyen-Orient, c'était l'Union européenne, c'était les États-Unis, c'était les Nations unies et c'était la Russie, propose un plan de développement de 3 milliards de dollars pour Gaza. Il le propose au G7. Il met même un peu de son argent personnel dans un projet de réhabilitation des serres des colonies. Mais Sharon ne veut rien de tout ça. Il veut boucler Gaza. Et le retrait, non seulement ne sera pas négocié, mais ce sera la terre brûlée. Tout ce qui se passe depuis est la conséquence de cette décision-là, qui à l'époque avait été jugée stratégiquement géniale par l'establishment politico-militaire israélien. Et on voit bien que, comme May l'a dit, ce qui s'est effondré aussi le 7 octobre, c'est tout simplement l'idée qu'Israël peut ne dépendre que d'Israël pour sa sécurité. Hein, soit il y a un partenaire palestinien, soit il n'y en a pas. L'Europe a gravement manqué sur cette scène. L'Europe s'est contentée de compenser les effets destructeurs, dévastateurs du blocus au nom d'une soi-disant aide humanitaire. Ça n'est pas une aide humanitaire, c'est une aide qui permet aux gens de ne pas sombrer. Et on voit qu'aujourd'hui, c'est le même raisonnement qui est tenu et qui, ô surprise, n'arrive même pas à empêcher la famine galopante à Gaza, sans compter les épidémies et les privations de toutes sortes qui, évidemment, vont emporter une partie des plus vulnérables, c'est-à-dire les enfants. La proposition d'un corridor entre Chypre et Gaza est une proposition ancienne, il se trouve que je l'ai défendue longtemps, et là, soudain, on considère que pour amener par la mer l'aide qu'on ne peut pas, parce qu'Israël ne veut pas amener par la terre, soudain, tout le monde s'éveille, les carnets de chèques s'ouvrent, les bonnes volontés fleurissent, et voilà ce qu'il faut faire, mais 1000 fois plus. Et c'est l'Europe qui doit le faire, parce qu'il n'y a que l'Europe qui peut le faire. Les États-Unis sont complètement disqualifiés en matière de processus de paix. Et l'Europe peut apporter aux deux peuples ce dont ils ont le besoin le plus urgent, le plus vital possible, c'est-à-dire les normes, le droit, la prévisibilité, la rationalité. On n'a plus besoin de bombes au Moyen-Orient. On n'a même pas vraiment besoin d'avions qui larguent de l'aide humanitaire. On a besoin de ça, et c'est l'Europe qui doit l'apporter, et le plus tôt serait le mieux.
Merci. Mai, vous avez compris les questions qui vous ont adressées. La première porte essentiellement sur votre vision que notre interlocuteur, Léo Kahneman, trouvait peu pertinente, ou voire impossible, utomiste. Les autres questions traitaient plus particulièrement de l'opinion publique israélienne aujourd'hui et sa capacité de transformation et d'évolution face à la situation présente.
Yes, okay, thank you for your important questions. I'll start with trying to elaborate very shortly and briefly about our suggested solution, as it is pretty difficult to conceptualize, especially as we've been, very kind of narrowed into the classic two-state solution, and so it's impossible for us to imagine anything else. And so although our name is Two States, One Homeland, people accuse us of being a one-state solution, and then when we talk about, sharing the land, we were accused. So let's try to organize that. I will do my best, and we're always here to have more questions and discussions. What we suggest is moving away from segregation, which has proved itself to fail Israelis and Palestinians. We know that segregation is never just. We know that segregation is not coherent with the integration in the Middle East. We know that water knows no boundaries. Clearly, security knows no boundaries at this point as well. Neither does air pollution or soil. So when we think about sustainability, we cannot think about it through the paradigm of complete segregation and separation. And so what we are offering is a two-state solution that is moving away from segregation into a better balance of integration, which already exists, but under a dynamic of power and inequality. And so what does that look like? It looks like two-state solution, two states, Israel and Palestine, independent, sovereign, democratic states, with the green line as its borders, two states. I want to say it again. There are two states, Israel and Palestine, everything you know. And we move towards eventually, gradually, freedom of movement, as well as freedom of residency. Eventually, gradually, we are not going to open any borders tomorrow. But again, I encourage you, if you think this is utopian, as someone who lives in Europe or in Switzerland, I encourage you to think about yourself. And again, I'm going back to the examples of Germany and France. But for us to imagine that in 80 years, we will be able to have a freedom of movement and freedom, a certain amount of freedom of residency in Israel-Palestine, I think that's probably at this point the most pragmatic solution you have on the table. And I will say that the freedom of movement and freedom of residency helps you to unpack the deadlocks of the classic two states. And if you will argue that the classic two states is the most pragmatic solution, I will say, well, you know what? I wish you good luck, but I think that at this point, with a million Jews living in Palestine, when you know that what happens in Al-Aqsa goes to Gaza and goes to Yafo and to Akko and to Haifa and to Ramle and Lod and Ramallah, when you know that the attachment of the Palestinian people, and Ali mentioned the issue of refugees, the attachment of the people of Palestine is more to Yafo and Haifa and Akko than to El Bire near Ramallah. You will not convince a Palestinian that Palestine ends in the Green Line. Unfortunately, the same goes for Israeli Jews. You have nearly more than 750,000 Jews living in the West Bank. You have a messianic government of settlers who are more committed to the land than to anything else. And so God forbid that we are an organization that strives and fights to end occupation. But we are challenging the notion that there cannot be two independent states, sovereign states with equality, collective, individual, while living in the same homeland. And to deal with these issues, and again, I go back to the example of security. Security lies in very tight collaboration. So does climate, so do water. We have to create these infrastructures, these mechanisms, these shared institutions that will help us take care of the things that are anyway shared, while allowing us for having a political separation between Israel and Palestine. I'm just going to, I hope that explains a little bit about our solution. We're happy to send more information. But I do want to just say that back from 2 weeks in the US, including meetings with the White House and with the State Department and with Thomas Friedman at the New York Times, experts on Israel-Palestine know that the paradigm of separation has failed and that a certain paradigm of integration and partnership is necessary for a sustainable peace, I also want to encourage you to have Israelis and Palestinians identify and plan what peace looks like, and not to leave it in the hands of the US or Europe.
Can you say just in
I'll
a few
just say
words
very shortly about
yes, very, very shortly, because apparently it's 41 seconds remaining, about the transformation, the needed transformation of Israeli society.
There's no time for peace, you see.
Right. I will say a few things. I will say that number one, do not listen to Israelis and Palestinians right now. Listen to Ali and to me, but do not listen to Israeli and Palestinian public. We are crazy, we are traumatized. Do not listen to us at this point. We need leadership. Leadership needs political vision, and this is what Ali and I are here to talk about. We need political vision to create political change, to create a reality where this exists. And this government in Israel is definitely not going to be a partner to peace. I can assure you that. But we're working every day on the ground to change this government through the idea of hope. And I will tell you that since October 7th, our movement has grown by thousands of percent and thousands of people. And I just come back to you today from a big conference in the Knesset, in the Israeli Knesset, that has for the first time since October 7th organized a conference to talk about the day after and about political vision that we were a part of. And I'm very proud that finally, after 6 months, that conversation has started happening in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament. And I want to say another thing. We need international pressure. We will have to create this, but we will not be able to do it alone without pressure from the outside to end this war and to committing to connect the end of the war to a political viable future and to an end game, not to return on Oslo mistakes of a roadmap. We need an end game, a Palestinian sovereign state side by side with an Israeli sovereign state, using the mechanisms that we know can ensure a sustainable future.
Thank you. On arrive à la fin du débat et j'aimerais saluer le courage, la détermination de Mai et de Ali et de leur souhaiter vraiment tout le courage et toute notre solidarité et effectivement qu'un cessez-le-feu intervienne très rapidement. J'aimerais naturellement aussi remercier Jean-Pierre Filliot pour sa très fine connaissance de ce Proche-Orient que nous aimons tant.
I just want okay, I will give my right to stall 2 minutes from the, time for peace. To respond to the lady, as a Palestinian, my activism, my belief on my rights is not depend on what the Israeli street thinks. Is not depend on Bibi Netanyahu. I'm not expecting justice from such person or such system, by the way. And I'm not advocating or offering justice to anyone. I think the minute we Palestinians start designing our activism based on our belief of success and with the best weapon, which is our humanity, and with the good strategic political action, which is our allies and partnership, I think those voices and those majorities of right wing will be decreased to the minimum where May and others will have a platform to tell their traumatized society that there is a partner. There is a partner that each government has killed him. Because partner you don't find in the jungle. Partner you create. This is partnership.
Thank you. Shukran, toda raba. Merci.